than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Logan Sekulow.
Welcome to Sekulow. Hope you all had a great 4th of July. And of course, a lot of you will be celebrating all weekend long, as we are as well. And that's really what we're going to do today. Celebrate the big victories of the ACLJ as well as the victories around the world. So be a part of that conversation right now. I encourage you to get your comments in right now live. Let me know where you're watching from. I always like to read those. See what kind of impact is happening around the world as we are heading into this weekend. A lot of you, like I said, are relaxing, enjoying, celebrating, as we should. You know, the times these days can get dark. Things can feel really intense. But on very specific occasions like this, we can take a break and celebrate with our families. And that's what we're going to do today as well. Is we're going to celebrate some of the big wins the ACLJ has had over the last week. It's going to be a great show. It's going to be packed. Make sure you stay tuned. Also, I want to take time to really push our Life and Liberty Drive. As we are heading into this 4th of July weekend, I guess it's the 5th of July, but we're heading into the weekend here. A lot of you will be thinking about ways that you can help protect and save our country, and really becoming an ACLJ champion could be a huge way to do it at any level you'd like. You can do that for as little as, I think, $5, maybe the lowest, just due to transactional, but you pick the statement you want to make. You want to make $5? That is fine. If you want to make $100, that's great. And that gets charged on a recurring monthly basis, and it supports the work here at the ACLJ, whether that's our incredible legal work that you're going to hear about through all this broadcast, or this broadcast itself. And all the great videos you see on YouTube, all the great videos you see on Rumble, all the incredible articles that are on ACLJ.org or on all of our social media platforms, or this incredible team that I'm looking at right now who does just an amazing job. We could not have them do this. We couldn't have the best of the best without your support. And as we celebrate our liberty this weekend, we are facing some real considerable challenges. And that's why we've launched our Life and Liberty Drive this week, where your gifts are doubled dollar for dollar. What that means, if you're not familiar with sort of a match, that means you give $20, there's another donor on the other side ready to unlock their $20 match. And only through your support can we fight for the issues that are crucial to hold on to our God-given freedoms. We have seen what this administration will do, and it is everything in their power to undermine our constitutional republic. They'll target their rivals. They'll target people of faith. They will target and betray the state of Israel. And of course, they will do anything to fight against the protection of life, including the command to reinstate Roe versus Wade. But right now, we are fighting against it. You can be a part of that fight as well. Today, we're going to be filing a major brief to defund Planned Parenthood at the Supreme Court. And if there ever was a time that this could happen, it is now. We've just submitted a key filing to the ICC. You've heard about that. And you're going to hear about it a little bit later, to defend Israel from the acts of lawfare, which is happening in such an aggressive way right now. We can't do any of these challenges. We can't take any of these to court. We can't even broadcast this show without you. So I'm going to ask you today to donate at ACLJ.org. If you're watching online, scan the QR code. It's really easy. Or ACLJ.org/life and liberty if you'd like, and have your tax-deductible gifts doubled. And if you're able, like I said earlier, I'm going to ask you to become an ACLJ champion by making your donation a monthly gift. So you'll make your donation today. It will be doubled during our match, and then ongoing, it'll be an individual donation every month, and that's what we call ACLJ champions. And we are thrilled to announce right now, I have a printout copy right now. We have an all-new ACLJ prayer guide for the month of July. It just launched. Over 175,000 prayer guides have been downloaded from our website, and that is just in the last year. So it's amazing, and we feel your prayers in everything we do, and we really do. I feel them as we go into these holiday weekends, as we go in, when I look at the reports, when I see all the individual names that come up when these donations are made. We can feel your support. Go to ACLJ.org, though, right now, /pray, ACLJ.org/pray, to download your prayer guide, be a part of it. It's a wonderful, beautifully laid out, helps you pray for the causes and the issues of the ACLJ and for our country and for our incredible team here. I encourage you to do that. Again, that's not even related to anything. Just go and do it. Just go download it. The prayers mean just as much. They mean more than even your financial support. And of course, we are in that middle of that Life and Liberty Drive. We'll be right back with more on Sekulow. Stay tuned. Get your comments in. We'll be right back.
Major breaking news from the U.S. Supreme Court on the final day of its term. The High Court has just issued one of its most consequential rulings in recent decades, a decision that not only affects the 2024 race for president following last week's contentious debate, but also the future of the presidency itself.
We have word that the Supreme Court has issued a ruling on the extent of presidential immunity from criminal prosecution for conduct alleged to involve official acts during the tenure of President Trump.
Under our constitutional structure of separated powers, the nature of presidential power entitles a former president to absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for actions within his conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority. He is entitled to at least presumptive immunity from prosecution for all his official acts.
What the court does here is steps through each of the actions of former President Trump in his alleged conspiracy to overthrow the 2020 election.
I can't see how this doesn't induce cardiac arrest with the special counsel. At one point in the opinion, they say, look, this is a quote, the indictment's allegations that Trump attempted to pressure the vice president to take particular acts in connection with his role with the certification proceeding thus involve official conduct. And Trump is at least presumptively immune from prosecution for such conduct. The court then goes on to say that the burden, of course, is on Jack Smith. He has to show that this does not pose any intrusions into the executive branch. The court says that that this, quote, may well hinder the president's ability to perform his constitutional functions. So here the court is imposing a very significant burden on Jack Smith when this goes back to the judge.
Welcome back to Sekulow. A ton of you are broadcasting, coming in, watching our broadcast right now, wanting to hear the breaking news. Obviously, the breaking news is a big win, or at least perceived big win out of the Supreme Court for President Trump in the case whether he has presidential immunity and whether presidential immunity is even a thing. Now we find out it is, with pretty overarching means. People were asking, well, who were the dissents? Because we said it was a 6-3. You had Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson all coming through with a dissent there. But my dad, Jay Sekulow, is joining us right now. I just want to get your initial thoughts. People want your feedback of what this means and what it looks like for the future for some of these President Trump's cases.
Well, number one, it's a huge win for the president, former president, because the court not only recognized immunity, but they said there's presumptive immunity. In other words, it's presumed that the acts of the president are engaged in are official acts. And then they went through a litany of the indicted facts and said that most of those were official acts. There's only a couple that that John Roberts is sending back to the trial judge for an evidentiary hearing. And even on those, it's presumed, he says that in the order, in the opinion, it's presumed that those are official acts. By the way, the opinion tracks very closely to the brief that we filed, and it also cites frequently to the cases we argued for President Trump 4 years ago at the Supreme Court, Trump versus Vance and Trump versus Mazar. And both of those cases are cited extensively justifying the presidential immunity here. Let me tell you something that a lot of commentators are not picking up. This will end the case in Georgia against President Trump, because remember, that conversation that serves as the basis of that lawsuit was strictly the phone call to Brad Raffensperger. Well, under the court's analysis, that is not only presumed official act, that is an official act. So I think Fani Willis's prosecution of the president is dead.
As we look at this opinion and you couple it as well with the Fisher case that came out last week, and even on this broadcast you said the case for Jack Smith is dead there, but now you even have the broader statute he was charged with, the conspiracy to defraud the United States, and that is one of the specific charges that the court seemed very nervous about, especially in light of future presidencies. And when you look at this coupled today with what we have as well as last week, do you think that the district court even takes this at this point, or does Jack Smith have to refile in some way to try to parse this out?
Well, I think there's going to be motions to dismiss filed on the basis of the two conspiracy claims that are the basis of the decision that came out last week. So And he can't simply refile charges. He has to reimpanel a grand jury. So I think we'll effectively, and to our audience, those cases, Jack Smith's hurdle now is, I think it's insurmountable. This is a typical of what Jack Smith does, by the way. He overcharges everything. And this is another example of that.
Let's go ahead and take a phone call. A lot of people are calling in with some questions about sort of legality and the future of some of these cases. Let's go to Angie, who's calling on line 1. She's in Colorado listening on the radio. Angie, welcome. You're on the air.
How does this case, the immunity, affect the ruling on July 11th that Merchan's going to hand down?
So for the Judge Merchan's case, how will it affect, really, how does it affect in general a lot of the cases, Dad? Maybe you could break that down a bit. How does it affect the cases moving forward, or the ruling that's coming, or even the sentencing that's coming? Does this play a factor?
Yeah, so like as I said, I think the Georgia case is totally dead, I think, as it relates to President Trump. So I think that's over with. Merchan's was a state criminal proceeding on business records. Probably doesn't apply to that at all. I think the same's true with the New York AG case. Not likely to apply here. It may raise issues that I'm sure will be litigated. But I think the Georgia case, which was the next pressing case for the president, is got serious trouble. And I think Judge Cannon's case, the document case, it's also got serious trouble because he's going to argue, the president will argue, that those records were taken in the context of official acts of the presidency. Remember, they were moved down before he was still in office.
I think people keep bringing up, there's a lot of comments coming in. A lot of people are encouraged by this. And obviously, up until last week, there was dealt out some wins, some losses here. You had a big buildup of the Supreme Court where there's been a lot of pushback, whether that is on Justice Alito, whether that is on just the court. We even saw it in the debates where President Biden said, well, he's packed it full of hardcore conservatives. But then we've seen some kind of switches in there. We've seen some wins and losses. It does feel like we actually have more of a balanced Supreme Court than the left maybe wants you to believe.
Well, last week, Logan, the case, I think the example of that was the case involving the January 6th protesters, because you had Justice Jackson join the conservatives and Justice Barrett join the liberals. And, of course, the conservatives carried the day with Justice Jackson vote. And she went and wrote a separate concurring opinion spelling out the importance of the case for First Amendment purposes, which, again, was something we argued. So you look at all of this, and you've got to realize that these are not necessarily falling on ideological lines. But I think this has been I will tell you this. I believe this is a death blow to Jack Smith's litigation. Between Friday's decision or Thursday's decisions and today's, it's a death blow to his case in Washington, D.C.
When you think of the broader implications of this, and this is one thing that I know we reference many times, that if you can start picking apart and even the broadness of the conspiracy to defraud statute, things that you don't like about what a president has done during their presidency, and then rogue prosecutors, as you've discussed many times, decide to go after a former president or even a sitting president building a case while they're in office. In one part of the opinion, it says an enterprising prosecutor in a new administration may assert that a previous president violated that broad statute, referring to Section 371. Without immunity, such types of prosecutions of ex-presidents could quickly become routine. Enfeebling the presidency and our government would result with a cycle of factional strife. Do you think that even President Biden and maybe even former President Obama are sighing a sigh of relief at this opinion?
Of course they are. I mean, I couldn't believe that he allowed the Solicitor General to argue there was no immunity, because it affects him. It affects every president. And by the way, that was very similar to the line I opened up the oral argument with in 2020 when I said 2,300 prosecutors going after a president. I said just 10% of those went after him. It'd be 230 cases. So Justice Roberts picking up the same kind of thought when he said that it allows for a new administration to come in, and then the Department of Justice starts going after the previous administration criminally. So, yeah, of course, I think at the end of the day, they're bringing a sigh of relief. I mean, the Biden administration's got other problems right now, and that's determining whether he's going to even stay in running for office. But this decision today, I think, is really good for the office of the presidency, no matter who that president is. We've always argued that the president has a unique role because it's the only branch of government where one person is the branch, and that's the executive branch, the president.
Absolutely. Phone lines are open for you at 1-800-684-3110. If you're new, by the way, because a lot of people are joining us right now on YouTube, and we can always tell about 50% of the audience doesn't subscribe. They're brand new to our show. We do this show each day, Monday through Friday, have for many, many years. You can be a part of this community. It's great. Click that subscribe button. We appreciate it. Hit the thumbs up. Do whatever you need to do to get involved. Hit us in the comments. If you don't even know what to say, let me know where you're watching from. We like to see, you know what? American politics and American news actually gets really ingested all over the world, and we get to see that on platforms like YouTube and on Rumble, where people are watching everywhere that they can, and they get their comments in. So it's always cool to watch. But again, we love to hear from you at 1-800-684-3110. Next segment, Professor Harry Hutchinson's joining us. And then later in the broadcast, if you have a question about sort of the Biden concerns, we're going to have on Rick Grenell. We're going to really be diving into that coming up towards the end of the broadcast. However, we are right now kicking off today our Life and Liberty Drive, which means all gifts when you support this work, because we can't do this broadcast, we can't do our legal work, none of it happens without your support. And that only happens really when you say, I am going to dedicate to give a financial, just anything, whether that is $5 once or whether that is $5 a month or $50 a month, whatever it can be. But really in these special months, and today kicks off the Life and Liberty Drive, your gifts are doubled dollar for dollar. And it is only through you and your support and our ACLJ members, as people that give on a one-time basis, regularly, or people that we call ACLJ champions. ACLJ champions, almost 21,000 of you are ACLJ champions. Those people that are dedicated to giving to the ACLJ on a monthly recurring basis. If you are one of those champions, I thank you. If you have been a champion, thank you. We'd love to have you back. Do that right now. Go to aclj.org. Have your tax-deductible gift doubled as we launch today. It's the big kickoff day of our Life and Liberty Drive. Keep us in the fight. Okay, we good? Keep us in the fight. aclj.org. We can't take, again, any of these crucial cases without you. Phone lines are completely jammed. We have phone calls about Jack Smith, about President Biden, about the Supreme Court, and we're going to go through all of those coming up throughout this broadcast. So again, the next segment where we joined by Professor Harry Hutchinson, give you more inside look into what this decision means and what it means for the future. Then later on, Rick Grenell, former acting director of national intelligence, who's a part of our Sekulow team, part of the ACLJ team. We could not have people like him if it wasn't for your support. So again, you're going to hear me talk about it today and for the next month. It's the Life and Liberty Drive. Be a part of it, but kick us off with a really strong day. That would be amazing. And also, 2 lines just opened up. 1-800-684-3110. President Trump just posted on Truth Social. Big win for democracy today. We'll be right back with more on Sekulow.
The Supreme Court has finally released its ruling on this long-awaited case, saying that Trump has immunity from official acts. In several cases, they cite what official acts may be, but they also leave a number of others open for lower courts to make a final determination on.
There's rarely a clear evidentiary line. That's a logical place to start. If the Supreme Court says that if there are things that happen within the ambit or even within the outer reaches of an official duty, which is really just a fancy way of saying that it's within the official duty, then there is executive immunity that applies to that.
When John Roberts was confirmed, he said he was a minimalist. That was the word he used. He talked about judicial humility and that he was a minimalist. It is not surprising to me that he wrote the majority opinion. He wants to write it in a minimal way. So there is no bright line rule. It's going to be fact specific.
This court has stood up for the office of the presidency and the executive power of the presidency in a way that, may be of some benefit to future presidents. I mean, we're looking at this through the lens of Donald Trump, but, the President of the United States has a lot of power for a reason. And they do take a lot of official action.
The immediate impact of this is clearly to slow down Jack Smith. Not that that was their intent, but the effect is that. And the idea that prosecutors who may have another agenda want to go and indict a president or an ex-president for actions while he was president, this court is basically saying there is presumptive immunity. They, of course, mention absolute immunity, but right now, within this case, there is is presumptive immunity. And so it will go back to the district court as to whether or not the official act, what it is specifically, and it will slow the whole thing down.
Welcome back to Sekulow. Professor Harry Hutchinson joining us in studio, as well as Will Haynes, executive producer of this broadcast. And we have a packed show today because obviously the breaking news is the Supreme Court has ruled on presidential immunity, essentially establishing, if you will, presidential immunity or absolute immunity if it's an official act. What an official act is, those are the big questions that we're going to have coming out of this. But I think all the commentators, whether you're watching Fox or CNN, whatever it is, are all giving this as a big win to President Trump. Professor Hutchinson, I just want to get your initial thoughts on this opinion.
Well, I think it's important to note that this particular opinion does not necessarily establish presidential immunity. That is established by the Constitution pursuant to the separation of powers. So it's embedded within our constitutional structure that the president needs immunity in order to function properly. Otherwise, he or she would be hamstrung with respect to engaging in conduct that might indeed be seen questionable after the fact. That's number one. Number two, the happiest two individuals with respect to this opinion are Barack Obama and Joe Biden, because essentially their conduct, particularly official conduct, is now subject to immunity, and the Supreme Court has made that very, very clear. Thirdly, I would argue that Justice Roberts was very intent on establishing this principle for all future presidents, not simply President Trump. So I think this is a win for the Constitution, it's a win for the American people, and it's a win for democracy.
Professor Hutchinson, there's something that comes out of one of the concurring opinions. This is from Justice Thomas, and it relates to something we talked about on this broadcast just a couple weeks ago, where Judge Cannon in Florida held a hearing, and a lot of commentators called it unprecedented that she would have this hearing not just on the documents, but actually had oral argument in her courtroom about whether or not Jack Smith has the authority or was properly or lawfully appointed as special counsel. And we predicted then that could be an issue that could find its way up to the Supreme Court. If she were to say, I don't think he has been appointed properly, that's going to be appealed, and then it would naturally make its way up to the Supreme Court on an issue like that. We're seeing a little bit of telegraphing from Justice Thomas where he sits on this issue, and he writes in his concurrence, in this case, the Attorney General purported to appoint a private citizen as special counsel to prosecute a former president on behalf of the United States. But I am not sure that any office for the special counsel has, quote, been established by law as the Constitution requires. By requiring that Congress create federal offices, quote, by law, the Constitution imposes an important check against the president. He cannot create offices at his pleasure. If there's no law establishing that office that the special counsel occupies, then he cannot proceed with this prosecution. And he even goes on to say, if this unprecedented prosecution is to proceed, it must be conducted by someone duly authorized to do so by the American people. So we see a Supreme Court justice taking on an issue that's a very live issue in a court in Florida right now. Judge Cannon has not ruled on that yet. But what's your take on what Justice Thomas decided to reveal here about his thoughts on the office of special counsel?
Well, several takes. Number one, Justice Thomas is telegraphing an issue before Judge Cannon's court. That's number one. Number two, I think Justice Thomas is correct. More likely than not, Jack Smith was not duly appointed consistent with the United States Constitution. If Justice Thomas is correct, then all of the cases brought by Jack Smith should fall apart, and you would then need to appoint a different individual who would, I think, have to go before a grand jury and to bring these cases in the future. So this means at the end of the day, I think at least from Justice Thomas' perspective, that all of these cases fall away. And as Jay pointed out correctly, I think, the Georgia case goes away, the Jack Smith case in Florida goes away, and the election interference case goes away. And so I think at the end of the day, what have we seen? We have seen a waste of millions upon millions of dollars in the prosecution of a former president. And there is no legal or constitutional basis for these prosecutions.
Do you think they go away regardless if President Trump wins re-election?
I think that is. I think that is. I think that
a lot
is
of people are obviously
correct.
saying if he wins, a lot of these are dead. But so whether he wins or loses, these cases should go away, and it provides basically an object lesson for any future president. If you are going to appoint a special counsel, make sure that special counsel was duly appointed. Otherwise, it is a waste of time. And typically, as we have seen with Jack Smith, virtually everything he does is a waste of time. All right, let's quickly take a call. Let's go to Roger, who's calling in Oregon on line 3. Roger, you're on the air.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I have more of a comment than question. I'm not surprised by the Supreme Court decision. I actually expected it. What I find encouraging and comforted by is that on one side we've got judges grounded in the Constitution, and whose decisions are framed by the Constitution. However, on the other side, there are judges who view the Constitution as a fluid document like Hillary Clinton envisioned in her debate with President Trump in 2016. And this is even made worse by a new liberal judge who can't even define what a woman is, which to me is very scary.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reaction coming out. There's actually, I saw one of the Chirons on, we have all the news stations up here, and it said, that Jeffries calls the Supreme Court extremist, right-wing extremists is what's happening. But of course, that's only on the cases where they disagree with them.
Right.
Because we've had now cases, many in the last few weeks, where you've said this is a very, balanced court.
Well, and even to that point, the caller was referencing Justice Jackson at the end of that comment, but she actually sided with the conservatives on the Fisher case, and that's where the statute of the obstruction of official proceeding was over broadly interpreted and actually could infringe on many First Amendment activities the way that the court was taking it. And so therefore, even sometimes the justices you don't expect to side with you, side with the Constitution.
Maybe some of them actually doing their job. And I think that's okay. If you actually have a Supreme Court where it's respected that they will call things the way they feel and the way they see it, and also what they think is constitutional. And I think maybe what we're seeing is, though they get mad about these cases, really, if you break it down, I'm going to encourage you, caller, to not fall into that trap, because there are sometimes, sure, they're going to fall a little bit more conservative, a little more liberal, but we are seeing now, time and time again, as it's been in the Supreme Court, and only got a minute here, that sometimes it can be pretty even-handed. And as you head into this weekend, I did want to take just a minute of your time to again tell you about our Life and Liberty Drive, which just kicked off this week. And what that is an incredible month where all donations are effectively doubled, matched by an incredible donor on the other side. And that is what really helps keep us in this fight. So I'm going to encourage you right now to donate today at ACLJ.org. And again, your tax-deductible gifts will be doubled. We can't take any of the crucial cases we're working on without you. We can't do this broadcast every day without you. We are not ad-supported. We are supported by individuals like you that are watching and listening to this broadcast right now. We are also thrilled to announce, like I said earlier, the new ACLJ prayer guide for this quarter, the July prayer guide. It just went up, so I encourage you to pray for us, and this will help guide you through some of our top topics at aclj.org/pray. Join the over 175,000 people that have downloaded this prayer guide.
Some people think champions are born, that it's a title that requires something only a handful can ever possess.
There are times in our lives that we are called, every one of us, to step up and serve a cause greater than ourselves.
Even when the loudest voices in the room say it's wrong, that it can't be done. It can be a difficult stand, but it's one any of us can make, including you.
You can be the change. You can make that difference.
You can be a champion. We cannot do what we do without you.
By becoming a monthly donor, you can become a champion of life.
A champion of liberty, a champion of freedom.
Please join us. Become an ACLJ champion today.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Logan Sekulow.
Welcome to Sekulow. Hope you all had a great 4th of July. And of course, a lot of you will be celebrating all weekend long, as we are as well. And that's really what we're going to do today. Celebrate the big victories of the ACLJ as well as the victories around the world. So be a part of that conversation right now. I encourage you to get your comments in right now live. Let me know where you're watching from. I always like to read those. See what kind of impact is happening around the world as we are heading into this weekend. A lot of you, like I said, are relaxing, enjoying, celebrating, as we should. You know, the times these days can get dark. Things can feel really intense. But on very specific occasions like this, we can take a break and celebrate with our families. And that's what we're going to do today as well. Is we're going to celebrate some of the big wins the ACLJ has had over the last week. It's going to be a great show. It's going to be packed. Make sure you stay tuned. Also, I want to take time to really push our Life and Liberty Drive. As we are heading into this 4th of July weekend, I guess it's the 5th of July, but we're heading into the weekend here. A lot of you will be thinking about ways that you can help protect and save our country, and really becoming an ACLJ champion could be a huge way to do it at any level you'd like. You can do that for as little as, I think, $5, maybe the lowest, just due to transactional, but you pick the statement you want to make. You want to make $5? That is fine. If you want to make $100, that's great, and that gets charged on a recurring monthly basis, and it supports the work here at the ACLJ, whether that's our incredible legal work that you're going to hear about throughout this broadcast, or this broadcast itself. And all the great videos you see on YouTube, all the great videos you see on Rumble, all the incredible articles that are on ACLJ.org or on all of our social media platforms, or this incredible team that I'm looking at right now who does just an amazing job. We could not have them do this. We couldn't have the best of the best without your support. And as we celebrate our liberty this weekend, we are facing some real considerable challenges. And that's why we've launched our Life and Liberty Drive this week, where your gifts are doubled dollar for dollar. What that means, if you're not familiar with sort of a match, that means you give $20, there's another donor on the other side ready to unlock their $20 match. And only through your support can we fight for the issues that are crucial to hold on to our God-given freedoms. We have seen what this administration will do, and it is everything in their power to undermine our constitutional republic. They'll target their rivals. They'll target people of faith. They will target and betray the state of Israel. And of course, they will do anything to fight against the protection of life, including the command to reinstate Roe versus Wade. But right now, we are fighting against it. You can be a part of that fight as well. Today, we're going to be filing a major brief to defund Planned Parenthood at the Supreme Court. And if there ever was a time that this could happen, it is now. We've just submitted a key filing to the ICC. You've heard about that. And you're going to hear about it a little bit later, to defend Israel from the acts of lawfare, which is happening in such an aggressive way right now. We can't do any of these challenges. We can't take any of these to court. We can't even broadcast this show without you. So I'm going to ask you today to donate at aclj.org. If you're watching online, scan the QR code. It's really easy. Or aclj.org/life and liberty if you'd like, and have your tax-deductible gifts doubled. And if you're able, like I said earlier, I'm going to ask you to become an ACLJ champion by making your donation a monthly gift. So you'll make your donation today. It will be doubled during our match, and then ongoing, it'll be an individual donation every month, and that's what we call ACLJ champions. And we are thrilled to announce right now, I have a printout copy right now. We have an all-new ACLJ prayer guide for the month of July. It just launched. Over 175,000 prayer guides have been downloaded from our website, and that is just in the last year. So it's amazing, and we feel your prayers in everything we do, and we really do. I feel them as we go into these holiday weekends, as we go in, when I look at the reports, when I see all the individual names that come up when these donations are made. We can feel your support. Go to aclj.org, though, right now, /pray, aclj.org/pray, to download your prayer guide, be a part of it. It's a wonderful, beautifully laid out, helps you pray for the causes and the issues of the ACLJ and for our country and for our incredible team here, I encourage you to do that. Again, that's not even related to anything. Just go and do it. Just go download it. The prayers mean just as much. They mean more than even your financial support. And of course, we are in that middle of that Life and Liberty Drive. We'll be right back with more on Sekulow. Stay tuned. Get your comments in. We'll be right back.
President Biden's attempts to reassure supporters and really all Americans after his stumbling, at times vacant debate performance last week. A CBS News poll shows that voters, not the media, but voters have serious concerns.
Thursday's rocky performance did take a toll.
Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
72% of voters now believe Biden does not have the mental and cognitive health to serve as president, up from 65% before the debate. Nearly half of Democrats said he should step aside as the nominee.
Nearly half of those polled say he shouldn't remain the nominee. The Biden campaign says it's full steam ahead and is focused on reminding voters about the choice between him and former President Trump.
Congressman Jamie Raskin saying there's a world where Biden is not the party's nominee, but Biden himself would have to choose to step aside.
Whether he's the candidate or someone else is the candidate, he is going to be the keynote speaker at our convention. He will be the figure that we rally around to move forward.
The reality is that Joe Biden is our nominee. He went through a whole process, a whole primary process, which, as you know, is pretty complicated from a rule standpoint. He got all of the delegates. And what we can't do now is pretend that we can now undergo a whole new process with a whole new crew of people.
Several top party organizers are deeply worried, of course, about whether he is up to the task and can win. But the reality is there is no way to swap out their party's nominee at this stage unless Biden himself steps aside. Now, one longtime DNC leader told me there is still an effort to try to convince some sitting senators to have frank conversations with the president about stepping down. But in a new fundraising email overnight, the campaign directly addressed these calls and said if he were to drop out, it would lead to weeks of chaos on the convention floor, and argued that's the best possible way for Donald Trump to win.
Welcome back to Sekulow. We're now joined by Senior Advisor for National Security and Foreign Policy, Rick Grenell, who joins us here each and every week. But today, big Supreme Court victory comes out for President Trump. I thought this is a great time to have him. And, of course, the fallout from not only the debate, but now the weekend of going back and forth of whether it seems like the Democrats are going to actually get behind their candidate of Joe Biden, or the family's going to meet and then they're going to say, oh, but we decided we're going to keep moving forward, which honestly is what I hope happens, because I think the swerve of trying to replace him could be chaotic for everyone. So I'm very much in favor of that. And of course, after we saw the debate, we saw a clear victor there. But I wanted to get your thoughts, Rick, first on this win out of the Supreme Court for President Trump and the immunity decision. Your thoughts, just give me your thoughts in general. We'll go from there.
I mean, look, I think most people are sitting, listening to the Supreme Court decision and saying it's common sense, right? Donald Trump has immunity for everything he did as president because that is common sense. Of course he should, because he's got to make the best decisions. Sometimes those are tough decisions. But the personal aspect is where I think the left is going to try to wiggle their way in. But as president, there's not much that you're making that is personal. Everything you're doing is about the job because you are president of the United States. This seems like common sense to me, but seeing the left completely melt down with really crazy radical theories, I think that what so many people on the left did is they just read the minority opinion and they didn't read the majority opinion, and now they're screaming about the slippery slope of the minority opinion. But I think what people have to recognize is that the minority opinion, they lost. There were 3 of them, and 6 judges said, no, you're wrong. And so the majority opinion is what rules the day. And I think people just need to calm down, read it. It's full of common sense. It makes sense to the average person.
It should be good for all presidents moving forward, not just President Trump and all presidents previously.
Right. Specifically previously, because it's talking about former presidents in that point. But Rick, my question is, do you think we've seen this before, that when the left gets opinions out of the Supreme Court that they don't like, their first thing to do is to attack the institution and say, we need to pack the court so that we can only get opinions that go our way, which is seems to be the most effective way to preserve democracy, which is what they're so concerned about. But if you look at what come out today, and knowing that we are now in the heat of the campaign season, heading up to the convention for the Republicans here at the end of the month, and then a little bit later for the Democrats, do you think now maybe they're shifting a little bit more away from their angst against Israel and maybe turn it back at the Supreme Court on the left?
Look, I think that this today's Democratic Party is so radical, so left, that they don't even know what to attack. Every day it's something different. And if you would have told me that the Democratic Party was going to stand for more than two genders, an open border, more wars, you could just go through the list of things where they're going after their political opponents. They're trying to jail their political opponents. Today, Steve Bannon goes to jail. I mean, literally, this radical party, today's Democratic Party, needs to be defeated. They can't be compromised with. You can't come to some sort of a middle ground with people that are this radical. And I think that the Democratic Party needs to have an inward conversation about what they stand for. They've lost the middle, they've lost common sense, and they must be defeated to show them that they've got to come back to the middle. I mean, for people who are watching this election, we can't have a Democratic Party that literally is trying to say that there are more than two genders, and yet they're mocking people for, some sort of science denial. They've become our worst nightmares when it comes to denying common sense, denying the facts. And so what they need to be shown is that the American people reject them resoundingly in November. And then they'll have an internal conversation and fix their issues and hopefully come back and try to fight for the middle class so we can have a conversation about what's good for the middle class.
Yeah, let's take a phone call, actually, so we can also talk about what's going on in this situation with President Biden, obviously, as the post-debate fallout still happening pretty strong. Let's go to Sherry, who's calling on line 4. In Oregon, you're on the air.
Thank you, guys, and thank you for all you do. My question is, how can they change candidates in the middle of, after all the primaries and everybody voting for Biden that wanted to, how can they change to a different candidate if he steps down even when nobody has voted for the next person? And
Sherry, there is a process. There's a process that can be done. We'll go into that in a second. While we have Rick, though, but Rick, as of last week, you think it is too late for that?
Yeah, look, I think it's too late. I mean, Sherry's question is a good one as to how can they do it. Well, they could do it because they would suspend reality. They would suspend the rules and throw out common sense and manipulate the process to the point where everybody would say, wait a minute, you knew he was, I'm never going to buy that the media just found out on Thursday that Joe Biden has early stage dementia. They've been telling us that we're wrong and that it's a cheap fake video every time we've pointed it out for the last 3 years. I actually think the media are complicit in this pyramid scheme. The whole thing came crashing down because the media and the establishment in Washington were trying to trick us, and no one was coming forward to pull the curtain back from behind like Wizard of Oz to say, look what's happening. On Thursday, they could no longer keep up their charade. The whole pyramid scheme came crashing down. So now what we've got to do is hold them to account, hold them to the democratic process that they claim that they want to see. If they want to change horses right now, after their primary is over, they should be told that they can't do it. They had this opportunity. Joe Biden is their candidate. And I believe that if Joe Biden did step back, it's not an easy decision for the Democrats. Kamala is going to try to take the job, and then a whole bunch of people are going to try to challenge it. They only have 7 weeks before the convention. So time is ticking.
Yeah, it's not whether I've never seen anything that felt more calculated in my life on the press. When it went from here's the preview to the debate happens, and then all of a sudden, an entire panel on CNN have all decided in the same moment. No one's defending him. honestly, my son, who is not a huge fan of the policies because, he grows up in our household, was like, I feel bad for him. I feel bad for President Biden because I felt bad for him watching it. I think a lot of people did. And then you feel bad that there's not one person there defending you. And now all of it becomes a press statement of, oh, well, he needs to do the right thing, step aside. Then he meets with his family to try to step aside. But also I was telling Will, and I believe this in our audience, that President Biden has worked 90 years practically to become the president of the United States. He's a career politician. This is not a guy who you probably are going to easily be able to convince to not run. I mean, let's just take the politics aside that we don't agree with him. These kind of characters do not easily just go away.
Yeah. Look, I have to be honest with you, Logan. I'm on the front lines here, and what Jack Smith and this DOJ have done to me, what they've done to President Trump, what they've done to my friends. When I see the media literally lying for the Biden team, I don't feel sorry for them one iota. They made this bed. They picked this guy. They tried to dupe us. And I don't feel sorry for people who have manipulated the system completely. And I just want to say that because I think there are those of us on the front lines who have experienced this. I've paid a lot of money to defend myself in court for ridiculous, dumb lawsuits that are lawfare coming after me. And I know a whole bunch of my friends that have spent tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to defend against these ridiculous claims. And so when I saw this come crashing down, my only thought was, this is what they deserved. They sowed this, and now they must reap it.
Yep. Hey, we're going to take some more phone calls coming up. Thanks, Rick, for joining us. We always appreciate your commentary. You can read more content, see more content from Rick. Make sure you're subscribed to all of our platforms on social media, on YouTube, on Rumble, and as well on ACLJ.org. There's always some great content there. In the next segment, we like to hear, we've heard from incredible experts like Rick Grenell. We've heard from my dad, Jay Sekulow. We've heard from Harry Hutchinson. You've heard, obviously, from our team here. Now we get to hear what I always say, the most important voice in the room, and that's you. We got 3 lines open right now. Give us a call, 1-800-684-3110. If you're one of the brand new people, and I can tell just by the amount of you that are watching on YouTube, and on Rumble as well, but on YouTube right now specifically, well, actually hit subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Of course, you can ring the bell. You can hit the thumbs up, do all that. But hit subscribe right now because we do this show each and every day, and there's thousands of you watching, more so than even normal. So be a part of this great community. You get involved in the chats. You're seeing the clowns come in. Of course, that always happens right around now. The clowns get sent in. So have some fun here in the next segment. But I want to hear from you. 1-800-684-3110. We are kicking off day 1 of the Life and Liberty Drive. You've heard about the amazing work the ACLJ is doing. And we can't do that without ACLJ donors, ACLJ members, and ACLJ champions. That's monthly recurring donors. And right now, all gifts are doubled, dollar for dollar. Keep us in the fight. ACLJ.org. Your voice. Coming up next.
Major breaking news from the U.S. Supreme Court on the final day of its term. The High Court has just issued one of its most consequential rulings in recent decades, a decision that not only affects the 2024 race for president following last week's contentious debate, but also the future of the presidency itself.
We have word that the Supreme Court has issued a ruling on the extent of presidential immunity from criminal prosecution for conduct alleged to involve official acts during the tenure of President Trump.
Under our constitutional structure of separated powers, the nature of presidential power entitles a former president to absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for actions within his conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority. He is entitled to at least presumptive immunity from prosecution for all his official acts.
What the court does here is steps through each of the actions of former President Trump in his alleged conspiracy to overthrow the 2020 election.
I can't see how this doesn't induce cardiac arrest with the special counsel. At one point in the opinion, they say, look, this is a quote, the indictment's allegations that Trump attempted to pressure the vice president to take particular acts in connection with his role with the certification proceeding thus involve official conduct. and Trump is at least presumptively immune from prosecution for such conduct. The court then goes on to say that the burden, of course, is on Jack Smith. He has to show that this does not pose any intrusions into the executive branch. And the court says that that this, quote, may well hinder the president's ability to perform his constitutional functions. So here the court is imposing a very significant burden on Jack Smith when this goes back to the judge.
All right, it's time to take some phone calls. A lot of you been on hold for a long time. Let's go ahead and just go through them. Linda's calling right off the top. Linda in Maryland on line 1. You're on the air.
Hi. I thought I heard earlier, thank you for taking my call, by the way. I thought I heard earlier that somebody was suggesting that Prosecutor Smith or whatever Special Counsel Smith could refile. Yeah. But my understanding is since the SCOTUS sent it down and remanded it, that it has to be heard first before he could choose to refile. Is that correct?
Well, I think there's several different layers here, Linda, that we have to look at. And one is that there are 2 cases now that have been remanded after the decision out of the Supreme Court, one being the Fisher case, which related to the obstruction of an official proceeding charge. And then there's also the one now that refers to the immunity. So there will be a couple different angles that will have to be sent down. And then the lower court would have to look at, one, the Fisher opinion on whether or not that case could go forward on those charges. And at that point, if they say these charges cannot go forward, then that is probably when it would trigger Jack Smith needing to refile. It wouldn't be an immediate now that the Supreme Court has put it out. And that would have to impanel a new grand jury. That would have to have a different slate of evidence potentially because of the things that are having to be omitted from that. But then you also look at this where the court will also need to decide what in his original indictment would equate to being an official act or an unofficial act. So there is a lot of work that I think has to go forward with the district court naturally as a result of this being remanded back down. But it is necessary. I'm not necessarily sure what the timing would look like, but I think there are at least some work that Judge Chutkan would have to do first before he would then take it and refile.
And I think that ties in pretty well to our next call. By the way, a couple lines are open now, 1-800-684-3110. Kind of last chance to get on the air, 1-800-684-3110. Let's go to Tim. Tim, calling California. Tim, you're on the air.
Yes. Yeah, I got a question. This presidential immunity, does that apply to, let's say, the Biden case because of his influence peddling? A lot of that took place prior, or accused influence peddling. A lot of it took place prior to him being in president, but he maybe fulfilled those agreements that were made while he was as president.
Yeah, hey, Tim, so, I hate to cut you off, but you've got some sound connection problems, but I think this ties into the stuff that happens when he was a president, ties back into the what is an official act.
That's right. And so what Tim is talking about here is the accusations that have been levied against the president. If they were things that he was doing, and Hunter Biden was using the fact that he was the former vice president, one, that would be a completely different set of facts, but most of that they've keyed in on was either while he was vice president or after the fact when he was out of office. And so that would not have any bearing on this case because this was specifically about presidential immunity and official acts as president. So this wouldn't really have anything to do with that. And it also kind of goes to the point of why it wouldn't have any influence on the New York case, because that was prior to President Trump becoming elected president. It was the alleged, or I guess what they decided were false business records. Yeah. They had nothing to do with his presidency and occurred before he was president. So none of the immunity claims here would take place there.
All right, let's continue on. Let's go to Susan, who's calling in Maryland on line 4. Susan, you're on the air.
Yes, hi. Regardless of who wins, where does all of the campaign money, the millions and millions of dollars, where does that money go, regardless of who wins the primaries, who wins the election?
So your question, Susan, is that
let's kind of reframe it a bit.
If Joe Biden were to not be the nominee or to remove himself from that process, where would that campaign money go? I believe it would probably. I mean, much of it is probably held by the DNC.
By the DNC.
As it is.
So I bet you'd have a lot of it shifted. As well as, I mean, there are costs. They got to wrap up business. Right. Who knows what staff is being moved over? Look, it'd be a very unprecedented thing to happen. But I think what you probably would see would be just some of it shifting over because of as the current president and the nominee, a lot of this is being controlled by the DNC.
And as well, even when we talk about the primaries, when a candidate suspends their campaign, they don't shut up shop.
Yeah.
They normally have to pay off a lot of people for a long time that they had contracts with and things of that nature. So it's not like it would just cease to exist, the Biden-Harris campaign. So we would see some of that wiggle room there, but also it would probably end up going to whoever is the Democrat candidate there.
Yeah. All right, let's go take a last call of the day. Let's go to Dennis, who's calling in Arizona on line 2. You're on the air, Dennis.
Hi. My question is, would today's ruling on the immunity issue be the basis for a malicious prosecution lawsuit against these district attorneys?
So, Dennis, it's an interesting question. Obviously, optically, what Jack Smith is doing seems pretty malicious in a lot of what the left is doing. However, I reached out to some of our attorneys and got a little bit of an answer for you on this. One, the Supreme Court, by vacating and remanding, they were still telling the district court, now you need to go look at these charges and see, based off of our guidance from our opinion about presidential immunity, which of these charges can stand and not stand. So they didn't just wipe the slate clean in that aspect of the case as well. So one, those charges still exist while then they're re-examined and see what happens to go forward as well. But also, this isn't a improper lawsuit that you would see coming out of a civil dispute or even a criminal dispute where there is no cause of action or there's no probable cause brought forward by the plaintiff in this. So unfortunately, although it looks pretty malicious, the answer seems to be no, that wouldn't be the remedy here. But still a big vindication in this case.
Yep, absolutely. Hey, I want to appreciate and thank all of you who have been staying and watching, all the brand new people who are joining us on social media. Thank you so much to our incredible team who put this broadcast out there, our legal team that are always involved in every aspect. And none of this happens without you and your support. So today, as we wrap up this show, again, this is the kickoff today of our Life and Liberty Drive. I want to get off this show today, and I want to see that we have raised a lot of support. Because all of you, I know, thousands of you that are watching live and the millions of you that watch later on or listen, be a part of the Life and Liberty Drive right now. All donations are matched. That means if you give $20, there is another supporter out there who has already pledged to give $20 to match it. And as you head into this weekend, I did want to take just a minute of your time to again tell you about our Life and Liberty Drive, which just kicked off this week. And what that is an incredible month where all donations are effectively doubled, matched by an incredible donor on the other side. And that is what really helps keep us in this fight. So I'm going to encourage you right now to donate today at ACLJ.org. And again, your tax-deductible gifts will be doubled. We can't take any of the crucial cases we're working on without you. We can't do this broadcast every day without you. We are not ad-supported. We are supported by individuals like you that are watching and listening to this broadcast right now. We are also thrilled to announce, like I said earlier, the new ACLJ prayer guide for this quarter, the July prayer guide. It just went up, so I encourage you to pray for us, and this will help guide you through some of our top topics. At aclj.org/pray, join the over 175,000 people that have downloaded this prayer guide.